A simple fact that is documented for decades now. There is no sign similar to Pinocchio's nose.
That was a lie.
How good are we at telling if somebody's lying?
Pretty bad. Often when you make truth-lie judgment, we use beliefs that are erroneous. So you might think, for example, that someone is lying because the person is nervous. You might think that someone is lying because the person hesitates. Well, the reality is that hesitation or being nervous or looking away are not good sign of lies.
If we're pretty bad at telling if somebody is lying, do we usually think that people are lying more than they are? Or do we assume that they're telling the truth more than we are?
Essentially, we have a truth bias. So we generally think that people are honest, and actually, people are most of the time honest.
Is it subjective in the sense that if I think someone is lying before they even speak, whatever comes out of their mouth, I'm going to assume is a lie, versus if I think somebody is going to tell the truth before they even speak, then I will probably believe what they say, regardless of what they're actually saying in either circumstance?
That's exactly what might be happening when you're in such a situation. Essentially, you think that someone is lying without the person even speaking. And then the person starts speaking, and you see that the person is hesitant, nervous, you know, similar behavior. These are, if you're trying to really find the truth, you need to come with an open mind, because otherwise you might be subject to the confirmation bias. Yeah.
What are some, like, what in your research, what would you say are signs that someone is lying?
A simple fact that is documented for decades now. There is no sign similar to Pinocchio's nose. That doesn't exist. There's really not a sign that is always there when someone is telling the truth, or never there when someone is telling a lie, and vice versa. These are beliefs that dates back from a long, long time ago. But really, we behave in different ways from one person to another, but also from one setting to another.
I know you work a lot with the court system. Are there things that make somebody more credible than someone else? Like, what makes me, I'm going to believe this person. I'm not going to believe that person.
What I've seen throughout the studies that I've done is that witness, they are credible when they testify in a way that is expected from them.
Oh, yeah, like any deviation from what I expect, I would think that you're lying. Like, if I expect a quick answer and you take a while, like, what time did you get to the store? That's a simple question. If you take like 20 seconds to answer, I got there at 10 o'clock, I would think that you were lying. Even if you just take a while to answer the question naturally.
And what you're saying there is really a not wonderful, but it's really a good illustration of how vulnerable people can be affected by those stereotypes or by these expectations that the court have or that we have on a daily basis. But let's think about courts where people will lose their liberty. They might even lose their life because they testified in a way that is different from what would have been expected.
Yeah, I used to be a news reporter, and I remember covering this one court case, and the guy was ultimately convicted, and I think that he got a significant amount of time, basically in a he said she said situation, and I was actually pretty sure that he was telling the truth. He just wasn't answering things in the way that I think that people expected him to. It was like, I think he's actually telling the truth.
And also, the important thing is that those beliefs, erroneous beliefs, can affect both the person that is accused, but also a victim, A victim would testify in a way that goes against the expectations of the courts or jurors. So these beliefs or these stereotypes can more generally can affect the outcome of trials, and the consequences can be both for the victim and the accused. So that's one thing.
So How do we, I guess, if there isn't any kind of overt sign that somebody is lying, how do we get past those biases and find out, okay, is this person really telling the truth?
What research shows is that the best way to get to the truth is actually to make the people in front of you feel good, to establish a rapport, show empathy, show that the person is not being judged, ask open-ended questions so that you don't contaminate or lead the person to say something that might be erroneous. So you really need, like, if you really want to get to the truth, I would say that one of the important stuff is to make the person feel that they can say the truth.
Would you say I'm a good work wife?
Yes.
What do you think of lie detectors?
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So I'm not convinced by many of the claims that I hear about that. There are research, in very specific setting with specific questions asked that do show good results. But then what happens when you study something can be entirely different on how that machine is used in practice. And some of the claims that I hear, more in the public news and I'm really not convinced. These are extraordinary claims and there's no extraordinary evidence.
The only one that I'm familiar with is like the polygraph, right? Like, are there other supposed forms of lie detection that people use?
Well, there's many, and there will likely be even more. Now with those, the sorry, the hype around AI. I mean, I've seen that some companies are trying to sell software to put in glasses to know when someone is lying or telling the truth based on how people answer and how people behave. These are quite extraordinary claims, and even more extraordinary when you know the state of research about nonverbal behavior and lie detection. I mean, this is another level of extraordinary claims, I would say. So, and just I'll just come back to that. This idea of extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Between social media, where you can't really seem to tell exactly what the truth is, and politicians and PR spin and all that stuff, do you feel like we're more surrounded by lies than we used to be?
I don't have data for that, but I do feel, and that's the reality, that what my feeling is, that we're more surrounded by bullshit. So when people just don't care about the truth or the lie and just say stuff because they want to get the attention, they want to get the votes, they want to get the clicks, that's not necessarily lying. They just don't care about the truth or the lie. They say stuff to get, the attention.